Poor little girl sells cookies and tells the millionaire, "I need to sell everything to save my mum." He buys them all, but when she shows him her mother's photo, he starts to cry. Holden Mercer stared out his office window as the rain streamed down the glass. 3:30 in the afternoon, and the sky was already as dark as night. He turned back to his desk, pushed some papers aside, and sighed. Financial reports, spreadsheets, contracts, everything that was supposed to give his life meaning was there, scattered like pieces of a puzzle he could no longer assemble. The office was too quiet, it always had been. Holden liked it that way when he started working alone 5 years ago. No colleagues asking about his weekend, no small talk in the hallway, just him, the numbers, and the hum of the computer. But today, the silence felt different, as if it were calling in a debt he didn't know he owed. He picked up his cold coffee and grimaced. It was bitter. Everything had been bitter lately. Knock, knock, knock. The knocks on the door were quick, almost desperate. Holden frowned. No one came to his office without an appointment. He didn't even have a receptionist. He preferred it that way. No complications. Knock, knock, knock. More insistent now. Holden stood up slowly, adjusted his tie, and walked to the door. When he opened it, he could hardly believe what he saw. A little girl, soaked from head to toe, was standing in the hallway. She must have been about 5, too small to be there alone. Her brown hair was stuck to her face, her drenched jacket dripping onto the floor. But what stood out the most were her eyes. Large, dark, with a determination that didn't match her age. In her hands, she held a wicker basket filled with cookies, covered by a cloth that was also soaked. "Mister," she began, her small voice trembling from the cold. "Please, I need to sell everything to save my mum. My mum is very sick and needs medicine." Holden stood frozen, unsure of what to do, a 5-year-old selling cookies in the rain. Where was her mother? He wasn't the type to buy things at the door, but there was something about this girl that kept him there, just watching. "How much?" he asked, almost without thinking. $3 a bag," she answered quickly, as if she had memorized it. "I have 12. They're homemade. My mom taught me how to make them before she got sick." Holden looked at the basket. The cookies were wrapped in cellophane, tied with small ribbons. Even wet, yes, you could see the care someone had taken in preparing them. "Does your mom know you're here?" The girl looked down. "She's sleeping. She sleeps a lot now. I heard her crying on the phone, saying she couldn't pay the doctor. I thought if I sold the cookies, she would get better." Her voice faded at the end. Holden felt a tightness in his chest, a strange feeling he hadn't felt in a long time. A 5-year-old child trying to save her mother by selling cookies in the rain. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He had a few bills, $60 and $70. He took it all. "I'll buy them all," he said, placing the money in her small hand. Her eyes widened. "All of them. But sir, this is much more than—" "It doesn't matter. Your mom will be okay now." The girl stood there, holding the money as if it might disappear. Then suddenly she started rummaging through her basket. "Wait," she said. "I want to show you something. My mum always carries this with her." Holden was about to say it wasn't necessary, that she should go home, but she was already pulling something out from inside the basket. An old photograph with yellowed edges. She said it's of a very nice family she knew. She took care of a very special lady. The girl held the photo out to him. Holden looked at it and felt the world stop. In the picture, 2 women were smiling at the camera. One was younger, with dark hair and a kind face he recognized instantly. The other was older, frail, lying in a hospital bed. Holden recognized them both immediately. The younger woman was Marion Hartley, the caregiver he had hired to look after his mother. The older woman was Ruth Mercer, his mother. "Marion," he whispered, unable to look away from the photo. "You know my mom?" the girl asked, surprised. Holden didn't answer. He couldn't. The photo was trembling in his hands. He remembered those days perfectly. Marion had stayed with Ruth until the end, caring for her when he didn't have the courage to stay. She held his mother's hand on difficult nights, talked to her when the pain was too much. Holden would show up occasionally, always in a hurry, always with an excuse not to stay long. But Marion was always there. In the final days, when Ruth could barely open her eyes, she was still there. "She always talks about that lady," the girl continued. She said she was very special, that taking care of her was one of the most important things she's ever done. My mum would cry when she told me how the lady would hold her hand and thank her for everything. Holden handed the photo back. He didn't trust his own voice. Ruth had held Marion's hand, had thanked her. He didn't even know that. "What's your name?" "Tessa. Tessa, you need to go home now and tell your mum that someone who knew Mrs. Ruth sent help." She nodded and put the photo back in the basket. "Thank you, sir. My mum won't believe it. She always says there are still good people in the world." Holden closed the door slowly after Tessa left. He leaned his back against the wall and closed his eyes. His mother had been dead for 2 years, but suddenly it felt like yesterday. He could hear her voice, soft and tired, asking when he would visit again. He went back to his desk and tried to work, but the words in the report seemed jumbled. His mind was elsewhere, in a hospital room where a woman named Marion was caring for his mother while he hid behind excuses. He had paid for the most expensive caregiver in the city. He thought that was enough, that money solved everything. But Marion wasn't just a caregiver. She was a daughter, a mother. And now she was sick. While her own 5-year-old daughter was out in the rain trying to save her, Holden pushed the papers away. For the first time in a long time, his work didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the image of that soaked little girl, holding a photo that showed a truth he had avoided facing. Marion had done for his mother what he couldn't. She had been present. She had cared. She had held her hand when she needed it most. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside the office, something had changed. Holden didn't know what he was going to do yet, but one thing was certain: he wouldn't be able to forget the eyes of that little girl, nor the face in the photograph that he recognized too late. Holden closed the door slowly and returned to his desk. The spreadsheets were still there, waiting, but he couldn't focus on the numbers. Every time he tried to read a line, he saw Tessa's big eyes, wet and determined. A 5-year-old girl trying to save her mother. He pushed the keyboard away and leaned back in his chair. The photo she had shown him wouldn't leave his mind. Marion holding his mother's hand. Ruth smiling, even frail, even sick. When was the last time he had seen his mother smile? The clock on the wall read 4:30. He still had work to do, calls to return, reports to review. But none of it mattered now. His mind was elsewhere, in a past he had tried to forget. Ruth, sick. The words echoed in his head like an echo that wouldn't die. He remembered the day he learned of the diagnosis. He was in a meeting when the phone rang. It was the family doctor. "Mr. Mercer, I need to speak with you about your mother. The cancer has spread." Holden had excused himself from his colleagues, left the room and listened as the doctor explained about treatments, about time, about care. But the only thing he could think was, "I don't know how to do this." So he hired Marion, the best caregiver money could buy. Problem solved, right? He could keep working, living his life, while someone more competent handled the situation. But now, sitting in the silent office, Holden realized how wrong he had been. Marion hadn't just been an employee. She had been the daughter he couldn't be. The phone rang, making him jump. It was a client asking about an investment. Holden responded on autopilot, giving the man the information he needed. When he hung up, he realized he didn't remember a thing he had said. Tessa, the girl in the rain, she was no more than 5 years old and already had more courage than he had ever had. While he hid behind excuses and important meetings, a child left home alone to save her mother. Why was I never as brave as that little girl? The question hit his mind like a slap in the face. He tried to push it away, but it came back, stronger. Why? Why did a 5-year-old child have more courage than a 42-year-old man? Holden stood up and walked to the window. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still grey. Down below, people walked hurriedly, each with their own problems, their own lives. Did any of them have a daughter selling cookies in the rain? He went back to his desk and opened the bottom drawer. There was Marion's business card, yellowed and forgotten. Marion Hartley, specialized caregiver. On the back, she had handwritten her personal phone number. Holden picked up the card and stared at it. How many times had he called that number? 2, 3 times at most. Always to ask about medication or schedules, never to ask how Ruth was feeling, never to say thank you. He placed the card on the desk and tried to get back to work. But Tessa's words kept echoing. She said taking care of her was one of the most important things she's ever done. Important. Taking care of Ruth had been important to Marion, more important than the salary, more important than the job. She had seen Ruth as a person, not an obligation. And what had he seen? An inconvenience, a problem to be solved with money. Holden closed his eyes and forced himself to remember. The first few days after the diagnosis, Ruth trying to act as if nothing had changed, making dinner for him when he visited, asking about his work. She was dying, but she was still trying to take care of him. And how did he react? By visiting less, always in a hurry, always with an excuse on the tip of his tongue. I have an important meeting tomorrow, Mum. The client is waiting, I have to go. I'll try to come back next week. Lies, all lies. He didn't have meetings that were that important. He didn't have clients who couldn't wait. He was just scared. Scared of seeing his mother wither away. Scared of not knowing what to say. Scared of facing reality. So he let Marion do the hard work. She was the one who held Ruth's hand when the pain was too much. She was the one who talked to Ruth on long nights. She was the one who was there when Ruth needed someone. Holden opened his eyes and looked at the clock. 5:30. Normally he would work until at least 7, but today he couldn't. He put the papers in the drawer and grabbed his coat. The drive home flew by. He drove on autopilot, his mind elsewhere. When he parked in the garage, he didn't even remember leaving the office. The house was silent. It always was. Holden had lived alone since his mother died. Before that, she had her own apartment, but he always hoped she would show up by surprise like she used to. Now the house was all his, big, clean, empty. He went to the kitchen and opened the fridge. There was some leftover Chinese food, a bottle of water, beer. Nothing that looked like a real meal. When was the last time he had cooked anything? He grabbed a beer and sat on the living room sofa. The television was off, but he made no move to turn it on. He just sat there, drinking and thinking. Tessa, 5 years old, selling cookies in the rain to save her mother. Ruth, sick, waiting for a son who never showed up. Marion, caring, being present when it mattered. The hours passed slowly. Holden drank another beer, then another. He wasn't used to drinking so much, but today was different. Today he didn't want to think clearly. But the more he drank, the more the memories came back. Ruth teaching him to ride a bike. Ruth taking care of him when he was sick. Ruth making his favorite dishes on his birthdays. Ruth, always present, always caring. And when she needed him, where was he? Hiding behind a desk, pretending that work was more important than family. 9 o'clock at night. The phone rang. It was a colleague, wanting to discuss a project. He hung up without answering. He didn't want to talk to anyone. 10 o'clock at night. Holden tried to watch television, but he couldn't concentrate. All the shows seemed silly, meaningless. He turned it off and stared at the ceiling. 11 o'clock, midnight. 1 in the morning. Holden couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Tessa in the rain, or Ruth in the hospital bed, or Marion holding his mother's hand while he was in an office, pretending spreadsheets were important. 2 in the morning. He got up and started pacing around the house. Kitchen, living room, bedroom, office. Walking helped him think, or at least not think so much. But no matter where he went, the images kept coming back. Marion and Tessa, mother and daughter, taking care of each other, fighting together. He stopped in front of his bedroom window. Outside, the city was asleep. But somewhere, a 5-year-old girl was awake, maybe worried about her sick mother. Somewhere, a woman who had cared for Ruth so lovingly was fighting her own illness. She took care of my mother when I didn't have the courage. Now she's the one who needs help. The thought appeared in his mind like a light switching on. Marion had been there for Ruth when she needed her. Now it was Holden's turn to be there for Marion, but how? He didn't even know where they lived. He didn't have their address, didn't have a current phone number. All he knew was that a 5-year-old girl was selling cookies in the rain to save her mother. 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. Holden kept pacing the house, unable to stop thinking. Unable to stop seeing Tessa's face, her big, determined eyes. When the sun began to rise, Holden made a decision. He wasn't going to run anymore. He wasn't going to hide behind excuses. Marion had done for his mother what he couldn't. Now it was his turn to repay her. He picked up the phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. "Marcus, it's Holden. I know it's early, but I need you to do me a favor." Marcus had been his personal assistant for 5 years, efficient, discreet, capable of solving any problem. If anyone could find Marion and Tessa, it was him. "What do you need, Mr. Mercer?" "I need you to find the address of a woman named Marion Hartley. She was my mother's caregiver 2 years ago. She has a 5-year-old daughter named Tessa." "Right, it might take a while, but I can—" "Today, Marcus," Holden interrupted him. "Find out where they live. Today." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Understood, sir. I'll start right away." Holden hung up and went to take a shower. For the first time in a long time, he knew exactly what he had to do. He wasn't going to run from reality anymore. He wasn't going to let other people take care of what was important. It was time to be as brave as a 5-year-old girl. The address Marcus had found led Holden to a neighborhood he didn't know well. The houses were small, some in need of a paint job, but there was something welcoming about the narrow streets with their old trees. Children played in small yards while their mothers hung laundry on the line. A dog slept in the shade of a fence, and the sound of a television drifted from an open window of one of the houses. Holden parked in front of number 247 and sat there for a moment, watching. The house was small, with a simple porch and a wooden fence that had seen better days. A few flowers tried to grow in the small front garden, but they looked like they needed care. A broken pot rested beside the door, with a small plant trying to survive. He took a deep breath and got out of the car. He didn't know exactly what he was going to say, but he knew he needed to be there. Walking up the small path to the door, he noticed that one of the porch boards was loose. The paint on the door was peeling. The doorknob felt a bit wobbly when he went to knock. There was a doorbell, but it didn't look like it worked. Before he could knock, he heard running footsteps inside the house. Then a voice shouting something he couldn't understand, followed by a child's laughter. "I'll get it," shouted a voice he recognized immediately. The door opened and Tessa appeared, still wearing the same jacket from yesterday, but now dry. Her eyes widened when she saw him. For a second she stood still, as if she couldn't believe it. "Mommy!" she yelled, turning back into the house. "Someone's here to see you. It's the Cookie Man." Holden couldn't help but smile a little. The Cookie Man. That's how she saw him, not as some stranger, but as someone special who had helped when they needed it. Slow footsteps approached the door. Marion appeared gradually, leaning against the doorframe. Holden felt a pang in his chest seeing her. She was pale, thinner than he remembered, and seemed to have trouble standing. Her hands trembled slightly, and there were dark circles under her eyes. But when her eyes met his, she froze completely. "Holden," she whispered, as if she couldn't believe it. "What are you doing here?" For a moment, he couldn't speak. Seeing Marion like this, frail and sick, brought back all the memories of his mother. The way Ruth had gotten thinner each week, how her voice had grown weaker. But it also brought back the memory of how strong Marion had been for Ruth when he couldn't be. "I remember you," he began, lowering his head. "You were with my mother." Marion leaned more heavily on the door, still in shock. She blinked several times, as if trying to make sure she wasn't dreaming. "I didn't think you'd remember. It's been so long." "I never forgot," Holden said, finally looking into her eyes. "I only managed to go there once. I told myself I was busy. But I was scared." The silence stretched between them. Tessa looked from one to the other, not fully understanding the conversation, but sensing it was important. She moved closer to her mother and held onto the hem of her shirt. "Everyone carries their pain in their own way," Marion said softly. Holden shook his head firmly. "No, I ran away. You stayed. You took care of her when I didn't have the courage." Marion sighed and gestured for him to come in. She moved slowly, as if each step required a conscious effort. "Come in. We can't talk at the door. The neighbors will start to gossip." The living room was small but cozy. An old but clean sofa, a few photos on the wall, Tessa's toys scattered on the floor. There was a crumpled blanket on the sofa, where Marion had probably been resting. A half-empty cup of tea sat on the coffee table, already cold, A few magazines were stacked on a chair, and a half-finished puzzle occupied a corner of the table. "Sit down," she said, pointing to an armchair that, despite being old, looked comfortable. "Tessa, honey, go play in your room for a little bit." "But I want to stay," Tessa protested, holding tighter to her mother's skirt. "The cookie man is nice. Just for a few minutes, sweetie. The grown-ups need to talk about boring grown-up stuff." Tessa pouted but obeyed. Before she left, she looked at Holden with genuine curiosity. "Are you staying for dinner, cookie man? Mommy makes really good mac and cheese." Holden looked at Marion, who gave a small smile despite everything. It was the first smile he had seen on her face since he arrived. "We'll see, honey. Go play now. Can I show him my drawings later? Maybe, Tessa. Now go." When Tessa left, dragging her feet and clearly not happy about having to leave, Marion sat down slowly on the sofa. Holden noticed how carefully she moved, as if she were conserving energy, as if every movement hurt a little. "Did she tell you?" Marion asked, adjusting the blanket over her legs. "About you being sick?" "Yes. She was selling cookies to get money for your medicine." Marion covered her face with her hands. Her hands were thinner than he remembered, with more visible veins. "I didn't know she had gone out. When I woke up from a nap and couldn't find her, I nearly died of worry. I searched the whole house, looked in the yard, asked the neighbors. Mrs. Henderson said she saw her leaving with a basket, but didn't know where. I was about to call the police when she came back with all that money, talking about a kind man who had bought all the cookies. A 5-year-old child shouldn't be worried about getting money for her mother's medicine," Holden said, feeling indignation grow not at them, but at the situation. I know it's not right. I try to hide from her how much I worry about money, but kids feel these things. It's just been me and her since her father left us 3 years ago. He said he couldn't handle the responsibility of a family, that he wanted to be free." Holden felt the guilt grow even more. While he was isolating himself in his office, complaining about problems that weren't really problems, Marion was raising a daughter alone and fighting an illness. And now Tessa, at only 5 years old, already felt the weight of the family's financial worries. "Tessa showed me a photo," he said. "Of you with my mother." Marion's eyes lit up a little, for the first time since he arrived. "Ruth, she was special, one of the kindest people I've ever met. In the last few days, when she couldn't talk much anymore, she would hold my hand and whisper, 'Thank you.' She said I was like a daughter to her, that she had never felt so cared for, so loved in her final moments." Holden felt something break inside his chest. His mother had found in Marion the affection he couldn't give. Ruth had died feeling loved, but not because of him. "She talked about you all the time," Marion continued, her voice growing softer. "She said she was proud of the hard-working man you had become, that she understood why it was hard for you to see her sick, because you loved her too much. She said you were always sensitive, that you felt things very deeply." "I should have been there," he said, his voice breaking. "You were scared. It's normal. Many people can't handle the illness of a loved one. It wasn't normal. It was selfishness. It was cowardice. While you were holding her hand, I was in an office pretending that work was more important, pretending that meetings and spreadsheets mattered more than the last moments with my mother." Marion looked at him with a kindness he didn't feel he deserved. "Ruth always asked me not to judge you. She said that everyone deals with loss in a different way, that you were too sensitive, that you'd always been that way since you were a child, that your heart was too big and that sometimes it hurt." She said that. Many times she would tell me stories about when you were little, how brave you were, how you took care of her when your father died, how you made her breakfast on weekends, even when you were only 8, how you slept on her bedroom floor when she had nightmares. She never stopped believing in you. Holden had to fight back tears. His mother had defended him until the end, even when he didn't deserve it, even when he abandoned her at the moment she needed him most. "Tessa brought me back," he said, struggling to keep his voice steady. "When she showed up at my door yesterday, wet and determined to save you, I saw what I should have been for my mother. I saw the courage that a 5-year-old child has, and that I never had. You're here now," Marion said. "That's what matters. Ruth always said you would come back when you were ready." Holden stood up and went to the window. Outside, Tessa was in the small yard, pushing an old swing alone. She was humming a song softly, trying to distract herself, but every now and then she would glance at the living room window. "Tessa tried to thank me for the money I gave her," he said without turning around, "but she doesn't understand. I'm the one who should be thanking you. For what? For giving my mother what I couldn't give her. Presence, affection, dignity. For holding her hand when I was too far away to do it. For making her feel loved at the end." He turned to Marion, and she could see the determination growing in his eyes. "The money I gave Tessa isn't enough. I want to truly help. I want to do for you both what you did for my mother." Marion shook her head, clearly uncomfortable. "Holden, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Not for you, not just for you. For my mother, for me, for Tessa, for doing what's right." He paused. "What exactly did the doctor say?" "I want to know everything." Marion hesitated, her hands trembling as she picked up the cold cup of tea. She took a sip, even though it was cold, as if she needed something to give her strength. "That I need a treatment that I can't afford, intensive chemotherapy for 6 weeks, then surgery to remove the tumor. That without the treatment, I have maybe 6 months. With luck, 8. And with the treatment, they say I have a 70% chance of full recovery, but it will cost over $100,000 between medications, hospitalization, surgery, and follow-up. And I would need to be hospitalized for a few weeks, then more appointments, follow-up exams for years." Holden didn't think twice. "Tice, I'm going to pay for the treatment. All of it, every cent." "Holden, that must cost." "It doesn't matter how much it costs. You're going to get the treatment. We're going to call the doctor today and schedule everything." Marion started to cry, covering her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. "I can't accept this. It's too much. It's more than I could ever pay back in a lifetime. It's more than anyone should do for another person. You can and you will accept it." His voice was firm now, leaving no room for argument. "My mother would have done the same for you. And I should have done this a long time ago. I should have looked for you when I found out she had died." "Why do you want to do this?" she asked through her tears. "You barely know me. You don't owe me anything." Holden returned to the armchair and sat on the edge, looking directly at her. "Because you were there when I wasn't. Because you gave my mother dignity in her final moments. Because your daughter is 5 years old and shouldn't have to worry about losing her mother like I lost mine. Because it's what good people do for each other." They sat in silence for a moment. Marion wiped her tears while Holden tried to process the decision he had just made. It was a huge amount of money, but he had it. And for the first time in his life, he felt like he was spending money on something that truly mattered. "There's one thing," Marion said finally, her voice still trembling. "If I'm hospitalized, Tessa has nowhere to stay. I don't have family here, and I can't afford to pay someone to take care of her. The neighbors help when they can, but they can't take her for weeks." Holden looked out the window again. Tessa had stopped playing and was looking at the house, as if she knew something important was happening inside. She pressed her nose against the kitchen window glass, trying to see what was going on. An idea appeared in his mind. An idea that scared and thrilled him at the same time. He began, then stopped. "I'll take care of your daughter until you're back." Marion looked at him as if he had said something impossible. "What?" "Tessa can stay with me, at my house, until you've fully recovered. Holden, you don't even know kids. You have a structured life, an important job, routines, work can wait. And as for knowing kids," he looked at Tessa playing outside. "Maybe it's time I learned. Maybe I need to learn. Maybe this is exactly what I need." Marion shook her head, incredulous. "I can't ask that of you. It's too much responsibility. Tessa has routines, specific needs. She gets scared when she doesn't see me. She has nightmares sometimes. She's very attached to me." "You're not asking, I'm offering." He sat on the edge of the coffee table, closer to her. "Marion, you gave my mother something I couldn't. Let me do the same for Tessa. Let me be for her what you were for Ruth. But you're a stranger to her. Yesterday I was a stranger. Today I'm the cookie man." He almost smiled. "Kids adapt quickly, and you must know that yourself. and I'll do everything to make her feel safe." Marion was silent, thinking. Holden could see the conflict in her eyes. She wanted to trust him, but she was afraid. It was her daughter, the most important thing in the world to her. "How do I know you won't disappear when things get tough?" she finally asked. "When she cries in the middle of the night, when she gets sick, when she asks for me every day, when she throws a tantrum or won't eat." The question hurt, but Holden understood where it was coming from. "Because I already ran away once, and I'm not going to run away again. Because I look at Tessa and see the courage I never had. Because she deserves someone who stays, like you stayed with my mother. Because I won't abandon a child like I abandoned my mother." Something in the tone of his voice, in the firmness of his words, made Marion look directly into his eyes. And in that moment she saw something that reassured her. Sincerity, determination, and maybe, for the first time in a long time, hope. "She has her quirks," Marion said slowly, as if testing his seriousness. "She doesn't eat green vegetables. She's afraid of the dark. She likes to hear stories before bed. Always the same story 3 times in a row. I can handle that. She'll want to talk to me every day, several times a day." "Of course she will, and you'll be able to talk to her whenever you want. I'll give her my personal phone." "And what if I don't get better? What if the treatment doesn't work? What if I die?" Holden took her hands, which were cold and trembling. "It will work. We'll make it work. And even if it didn't, Tessa would never be alone. I give you my word. She would always have a family." Marion closed her eyes, fighting back more tears. "I never thought that a stranger would do this for us. Why do you want to do this?" "Because we're not strangers anymore," Holden said. "We're family now, you, me, and Tessa, united by Ruth's memory, united by what's right." "Tessa," she called, her voice still trembling but with a new strength. "You can come here, sweetie." Tessa came running, stopping at the entrance to the living room. Her eyes went straight to her mother's tears. "Mommy, are you crying? Are you in pain? Do you want me to get your medicine?" "No, love. These are happy tears. Come here, we need to talk about something very important." As Tessa approached, walking slowly as if she knew something big was happening, Holden felt a mix of nervousness and determination. He didn't know how to take care of a child. He didn't know if he would be good at it. But one thing he knew, he wasn't going to run away this time. He wasn't going to leave Tessa alone like he had left his mother. Holden's house seemed huge to Tessa's eyes. She stood in the entryway, clutching her small backpack tightly, looking around without saying a word. The silence of the place was different from the silence of her own home. There, it was cozy, full of memories. Here, it was empty, cold. "Now this is your home now," Holden said, trying to sound cheerful. "Want to see your room?" Tessa nodded without speaking, but followed him up the stairs. Each step echoed in the silent hallway. Holden opened the door to the guest room he had hastily prepared. He had bought some toys at the department store, made the bed with new sheets, and placed a small lamp on the nightstand. "What do you think?" he asked. Tessa looked around, then looked at him. "Where's Mommy? Remember, she's at the hospital. The doctors are going to take care of her so she can get better. When is she coming back?" "In a few weeks. But you'll be able to talk to her every day." Tessa sat on the edge of the bed, still holding her backpack. She looked tiny in the large room. "I want to go home." Holden's chest tightened. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know how to deal with a sad and scared child. He sat next to her on the bed. "I know you do, but for now you're going to stay here with me. We'll take care of each other until your mum comes back." Tessa didn't answer. She just opened her backpack and took out a well-worn teddy bear with a slightly torn ear. She hugged it tightly. "This is Mr. Brown," she said softly. "He sleeps with me." "Mr. Brown can sleep in the big bed. There's plenty of room. He doesn't like big beds. He likes small beds." Holden looked at the king-size bed in the guest room. It really was too big for a 5-year-old. "Do you want me to put some pillows around? To make a smaller corner?" Tessa nodded yes, but still looked lost. In the first few days, she spoke little. She answered when he asked something, but didn't initiate conversations. She spent a lot of time looking out the window or hugging Mr. Brown, watching cartoons on television. Holden tried to create a routine. They woke up at 7 in the morning. He made breakfast. At first, he burned the toast twice, but he got better. Tessa ate slowly, always leaving half on her plate. "Aren't you hungry?" he would ask. "Your mommy made it differently." "How did she make it?" "She cut the toast into little triangles and only put jelly on one piece." The next morning, Holden cut the toast into triangles and put jelly on only one piece. Tessa ate a little more. After breakfast, they would go to the hospital. Holden would wait in the waiting room while Tessa visited Marion. He could hear their voices down the hall. Tessa talking about the new house, about Mr. Brown, about how Holden burned the toast, and Marion laughing, even though she was weak. When Tessa came out of the visit, she was always more cheerful. But on the way back home, she would become quiet again. One afternoon, after 5 days of the silent routine, Holden tried a different approach. "Want to help me make dinner? I don't know how to cook. I don't know how very well either. We can learn together." Tessa looked at him with curiosity for the first time. "My mum taught me how to crack eggs." "Perfect. We'll make scrambled eggs." They went to the kitchen. Tessa climbed onto a chair to reach the counter. She cracked 3 eggs, letting a few pieces of shell fall into the bowl. "Oops," she said. "No problem. We'll get them out." As they picked out the pieces of shell, Tessa began to relax a little. She whisked the eggs with a large fork, her tongue sticking out in concentration. "Is this good?" "It's perfect." When the eggs were ready, they sat at the kitchen table. It was the first meal they had together, where Tessa seemed at ease. "Holden," she said, chewing slowly. "Yes." "Why do you want to take care of me?" The question caught him by surprise. He stopped eating and looked at her. "Because your mum took care of my mum when she was sick. Now it's my turn to help." "Was your mum nice?" She was very nice. I think you would have liked her." "Did she die?" "She did, but she knew your mum. They were friends." Tessa processed this information, swinging her little legs on the chair. "Will she take care of my mum in heaven if she dies?" Holden's throat tightened. "Your mum isn't going to die, Tessa. The doctors are going to take care of her. But what if she does?" He didn't know what to answer. He put his fork down and looked at her small hands, still holding her fork. "Your mum is strong. She's going to get better. Promise." Holden knew he couldn't promise something like that, but when he looked into her eyes, he couldn't say anything else. "I promise I'll do everything I can to make her better." The days went by and Tessa started talking more. She told stories about school, about her friends, about the things she did with Marion. Holden discovered she liked to draw, so he bought colored pencils and paper. She drew their old house, her mom, Mr. Brown, and then she drew the new house and with him beside her. "This is you," she said, pointing to a stick figure with dark hair. "And this is me, and this is Mr. Brown. It's very beautiful. I'm going to show Mommy tomorrow." One night, 2 weeks after Tessa had arrived, Holden was washing dishes when he heard a strange noise coming from her room. He went upstairs and found the door ajar. She was sitting on the bed, hugging Mr. Brown, sobbing softly. "Tessa, what happened?" She looked at him with red eyes. "I dreamed that Mommy went away and never came back." Holden sat on the edge of the bed. "It was just a dream. Your mom is coming back. But what if she forgets about me? She would never forget you. You're the most important thing in the world to her." Tessa wiped her nose on her pajama sleeve. "Is Mommy going to die?" she asked in a small voice. The question he dreaded most. Holden looked at her, at this small, scared child, and didn't know how to answer. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that life is sometimes unfair, that sometimes people get sick, that sometimes doctors can't cure everyone? He said nothing. He just took her small hand and held it gently. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I get scared sometimes too." "You do?" "I do. When my mum got sick, I was very scared." "What did you do?" Holden hesitated. He couldn't tell her that he ran away, that he hid, that he let someone else take care of everything. "I tried to be brave, like you're being." "I'm not brave, I'm scared of everything." "Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared. Tessa thought about this for a moment. Like selling cookies in the rain. Exactly. Like selling cookies in the rain to help your mum. She snuggled closer to him. Can you stay until I fall asleep? Of course. Holden sat on the edge of the bed until her breathing became slower and more regular. When he was sure she was asleep, he stood up slowly and was about to leave the room. Holden, she whispered in the dark. Yes, thank you for taking care of me. The next day, after the hospital visit, they were sitting in the kitchen drinking juice when Tessa started to talk. This time, she didn't seem scared. She seemed to need to tell him. Mommy used to work at a laundromat, she said, swinging her legs on the chair. She would leave early and come back late. Her hands were always red from the cleaning chemicals. Holden stopped drinking and paid attention. One day she came home crying. She said they let her go because the laundromat was closing. We ran out of money. Tessa looked at her cup. I saw her crying a lot in the kitchen when she thought I was asleep. She would look at the bills on the table and cry. Holden felt a tightness in his chest. Marion had gone through all this alone, trying to protect her daughter. Then she got sick, Tessa continued. At first, she was just tired. Then she started coughing a lot, and then she couldn't get out of bed some days. She looked at him. I thought that if I sold cookies, I could help. I could buy medicine to make her better. Holden looked at this small girl and felt a mixture of shame and admiration. Shame because he had spent so much time hiding from his own problems. Admiration because this 5-year-old child had more courage and love than he had shown in his entire adult life. Are you a very brave, Tessa? Mommy always said that we have to take care of each other. That's what families do. She's right. Mommy always said that when people take care of each other, they get stronger. Holden looked at her, at those big, serious eyes, and realized that something had changed inside him. In the past 2 weeks, he had learned more about courage and love than in his entire life. Your mum is very wise. Tessa smiled for the first time since she arrived at his house. A small but real smile. So we'll take care of each other until she comes back. Exactly. We'll take care of each other. That night, when Holden put her to bed, Tessa didn't cry. She hugged Mr. Brown and looked at him. Thank you for letting me stay here. You don't have to thank me, Tessa. For the first time since it all began, Holden felt at peace. He hadn't run away. He hadn't hidden. He had stayed. And maybe, finally, he was learning what really mattered. 3 weeks had passed since Tessa arrived at Holden's house, and something strange was happening. He was enjoying it. In the beginning, every morning was a struggle. Waking up early, preparing breakfast, dealing with a child who clearly preferred to be somewhere else. But now, when the alarm went off at 6:30, Holden no longer felt that heavy sense of obligation. Instead, there was a small sense of anticipation, a curiosity about what the day would bring. Good morning, Mr. Brown, he heard Tessa whispering in the next room. Today we're going to see Mommy again. Holden smiled as he brushed his teeth. Tessa always talked to the bear in the morning, telling it the day's plans. She didn't know he could hear, and he pretended he didn't. In the kitchen, Tessa was already sitting at the table, in her pajamas with her hair messy. Can I make scrambled eggs today? She asked. Of course. You're becoming an expert at it. Holden took the eggs from the fridge and placed them on the counter. Tessa climbed onto the chair that now permanently stood next to the stove. She carefully cracked 3 eggs into the bowl, picking out the pieces of shell with a small spoon. Look, only 1 little piece today, she said, proud. You're getting much better. As they scrambled the eggs in the pan, Tessa hummed softly. It was a song Marion used to sing to her, and Holden already knew the melody from hearing it so often. Sometimes he caught himself humming it too. Holden, Tessa said, looking at the pan. Yes. Do you like living with me? The question caught him by surprise. He stopped scrambling the eggs for a second. I do, and you, do you like living here? I like it more now. At first I was scared. Scared of what? That you wouldn't like me, that you would send me away. Holden looked at her, focused on the eggs, and felt a tightness in his chest. I would never send you away, Tessa. Promise? I promise. After breakfast, they followed their usual routine. Tidy up, grab coats, go to the hospital. But now the routine didn't feel like an obligation. It felt natural. In the car, Tessa told stories about her dreams. Today she dreamed she was flying with Mr. Brown. We flew up to the clouds and saw Mommy from up there. She was in the hospital garden, sunbathing. What a beautiful dream. Do you dream, Holden? I do. About what? Holden thought for a moment. Lately, he dreamed of simple things, of Tessa laughing, of Marion getting better, of family breakfasts. About good things, he said. At the hospital, Holden already knew all the nurses. They always smiled when they saw Tessa arrive, running down the hall with Mr. Brown under her arm. How is she today? He asked Nurse Janet. Much better. The treatment is working. She's stronger, more cheerful. Holden sighed with relief. In the past 2 weeks, Marion had improved noticeably. The dark circles under her eyes had faded, she smiled more, and she could stay awake longer during visits. While Tessa visited her mother, Holden would stay in the hospital cafeteria, reading the newspaper or just watching people. Hurried doctors, worried family members, children running through the halls. He no longer felt like a stranger in that place. Holden! Tessa appeared, running, her eyes shining. Mommy is sitting up in bed, and she ate all her soup. That's great news. She wants to talk to you. Holden followed Tessa to the room. Marion was sitting on the bed, fixing her hair. She smiled when she saw him. Hi, Holden, how are you? Good. You have much better color. I feel better. The doctor said the tumor has shrunk by 20%. That's incredible. Marion looked at Tessa, who was showing Mr. Brown to a doll on the nightstand. How is she behaving? Like an angel. She's teaching me a lot. About what? About how to make scrambled eggs, about dreams, about courage. Marion smiled. She's always been special. She really is. They talked for a few minutes about everyday things, the drawings Tessa made, the movies they watched together, the stories she told at bedtime. Holden realized he had a lot to tell, that his life had become full of small, important moments. On the way back home, Tessa was excited. Mommy said that maybe next week she can get out of bed and walk a little in the hallway. That's wonderful. And she'll be able to wear normal clothes, not just those hospital gowns. I bet she's looking forward to that. At home, after lunch, Tessa sat at the kitchen table with paper and colored pencils. It was drawing time, an activity she loved and that Holden had learned to value. What are you going to draw today? It's a surprise, she said, covering the paper with her hands. Holden went to the living room to check some work emails, but he found himself paying more attention to the sounds from the kitchen, Tessa humming, pencils falling on the floor, her talking to herself about the colors. 40 minutes later, she appeared in the living room with the drawing in her hand. Done, she said, holding the paper out to him. Holden looked at the drawing and smiled. It was him and Tessa, holding hands, holding flowers. In the background, a hospital bed with a smiling figure. Marion. It's us bringing flowers to Mommy, Tessa explained. It's beautiful, Tessa, really beautiful. Are we going to give it to her tomorrow? Of course. Holden stared at the drawing, the two of them holding hands. He couldn't remember the last time someone had drawn him happy. In fact, he couldn't remember the last time he felt truly happy before Tessa arrived. That night, after putting Tessa to bed, Holden sat in the living room with a cup of coffee. The house was silent, but it was no longer the empty silence from before. It was a silence full of presence, full of life. He looked around. There were toys scattered on the sofa, drawings stuck to the fridge, a forgotten doll on top of the television. The house was no longer just his, it was theirs. And this realization brought something unexpected, a sense of anticipatory loss. In a few weeks, when Marion was fully recovered, they would leave. They would go back to their small house, to their previous life. And he would go back to the silent house, to dinners alone, to empty weekends. The thought bothered him more than he imagined. For 3 weeks, he had convinced himself that he was just fulfilling a promise, repaying a favor, doing what was right. But now, sitting in the living room full of traces of Tessa's presence, Holden realized he had been fooling himself. He didn't want this to end. He didn't want Tessa to leave. He didn't want to go back to his old life. He didn't want to wake up in an empty house, have breakfast alone, eat dinner in silence. For the first time in years, His life had a purpose beyond work. He had someone waiting for him at home. He had conversations about dreams and drawings. He had scrambled eggs in the morning and stories before bed. He had a family. Holden drank his cold coffee and stared at Tessa's drawing, which was on the coffee table. The two of them holding hands. He wondered if it was selfish to want this to continue. If it was fair to wish for Marion to take longer to recover. No, he didn't want that. He wanted Marion to get well, to go home, to be happy with her daughter. But he also wanted to continue being a part of their lives. He wanted to continue being important to someone. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Marcus. "How are things over there?" his assistant asked. Holden looked around the room, full of life and childish mess. "They're good, very good. We need to talk about some contracts next week. Can it be in the morning? After 10? "Sure. Everything okay?" "Everything's great, Marcus. See you tomorrow." Holden hung up the phone and went upstairs to check on Tessa. She was sleeping soundly, clutching Mr. Brown, breathing slowly and peacefully. He stood there for a few minutes, thinking about how quickly life could change. 3 weeks ago, he was a lonely man hiding behind his work. Now he was someone who cared about scrambled eggs and drawings, someone who was afraid of being alone again. He didn't want this to end. And that discovery scared him as much as it reassured him. That night, after Tessa fell asleep, Holden couldn't go to bed. He paced the house, restless, his mind filled with thoughts he couldn't organize. The discovery that he didn't want Tessa to leave had left him confused. It was a new, strange feeling that made him question everything he thought he knew about himself. He stopped in front of his office door. It was a room he had used little since Tessa arrived. Before he spent most of his nights there, working late, reviewing reports, making calls. Now, he preferred to stay in the living room, where he could hear if she needed anything. He opened the door and turned on the light. Everything was exactly as he had left it weeks ago. The desk with a few scattered papers, the computer turned off, the leather armchair that used to be his refuge. But now the place felt strange, as if it belonged to someone else. Holden sat in the chair and looked around. How many nights had he spent there, pretending that work was more important than life? How many times had he used that place to hide from the world, from feelings, from the responsibilities that truly mattered? His eyes settled on the bottom drawer of the desk, the drawer he had avoided for years. He knew what was inside. He had known since the day he put it there and never touched it again. But today, for the first time, he felt that maybe it was time to face what he had kept hidden. He took a deep breath and opened the drawer. There it was, the yellowed envelope, with his name handwritten in a script he would recognize anywhere. Holden, in careful, slightly shaky letters. It was the letter Ruth had left for him, the letter he never had the courage to open. He picked up the envelope carefully, as if it might fall apart in his hands. The paper was yellowed at the edges, and there was a small stain of what looked like coffee in the bottom corner. He vaguely remembered spilling coffee on the hospital table when the nurse handed him the letter. Back then, 2 years ago, he couldn't open it. He told himself he wasn't ready, that he would read it when the pain passed, when he could think of Ruth without feeling that tightness in his chest. But the days passed, weeks, months, and the letter remained unopened in the drawer. Now, with Tessa sleeping in the next room, with Marion getting better in the hospital, with his life completely transformed by two people he barely knew a month ago, Holden felt he was finally ready. Or maybe he was ready because now he understood what was truly important. He turned the envelope in his hands. The seal was loose at the edges but still held. Ruth had sealed the letter carefully, as if she knew it would take him a while to open it. He took a deep breath and broke the seal. Inside was a folded sheet of paper and something else that looked like a photograph. He took the letter first, unfolded it slowly, and immediately recognized his mother's handwriting. The letters were shakier than usual, probably written in one of her last days. "My dearest son." Holden stopped. Just that first line made his eyes well up. It had been so long since he had heard his mother's voice, and now it was as if she were there, speaking to him. "I know you've always been afraid to talk about what you feel. Since you were little, you kept everything inside. Remember when your father died? You were 8 and you didn't cry once in front of me, but I heard you crying into your pillow at night." A tear fell onto the paper. Holden quickly wiped it away, afraid of smudging the words. "I never wished for you to be different. You were always sensitive, always felt things more deeply than others, and I always knew that was a gift, even when it seemed like a difficulty." He paused his reading for a moment. Ruth knew. She always knew he couldn't handle difficult feelings, and yet she never judged him for it. "I know you feel guilty for not coming to see me more often, but I want you to know that I understand. Watching someone you love fade away is one of the hardest things in the world, and you love me too much not to suffer from it." The tears were falling freely now. Holden didn't even try to wipe them away. "I want you to know that Marion was a gift in my life. She cared for me as a daughter would. She talked to me about you, about life, about dreams. She gave me dignity when I needed it most. And I know that one day you will understand why I am telling you this." Holden stopped reading. Marion. Ruth was talking about Marion in the letter, as if she knew that one day they would meet again. "I only hope that when the time is right, you will open your heart. That you will stop hiding behind work and excuses. That you will let people into your life for real. Love is the only thing that's worth it, my son. It's the only thing that remains when all else is gone." Holden had to stop reading. He placed the letter on the desk and covered his face with his hands. Ruth knew. She knew he was hiding, that he was wasting his life afraid to truly commit. "Be happy, Holden. Allow yourself to be happy, and when you find someone worth loving, don't let them go. Life is too short to waste on fear. With all my love, always, Mom." Holden sat in silence for long minutes, just looking at the letter. His mother's words echoed in his mind. "When you find someone worth loving, don't let them go." He thought of Tessa sleeping in the next room, of Marion getting better in the hospital, of how his life had gained meaning since they arrived. Was this what Ruth meant? Was this what she knew would happen? He remembered there was something else in the envelope. He picked up the photograph that was at the bottom. It was Ruth smiling, but she wasn't alone. She was hugging Marion, and both were smiling at the camera. Ruth looked frail but happy. Marion looked young and caring. There was something in the photo that conveyed genuine affection, true friendship. Holden turned the photo over. On the back, in shaky letters clearly written with difficulty, it said, "My caregiver, my great friend." He pressed the photo against his chest and closed his eyes. Now he understood why Ruth had mentioned Marion in the letter. She knew Marion was special. She knew that one day he would need to understand the value of what she had done. And maybe, in some mysterious way, Ruth knew that one day he would find Marion again, that he would find Tessa, that his life would become intertwined with theirs in a way he never imagined. Holden sat there for a long time, holding the photo, rereading parts of the letter. His mother's words seemed written specifically for this moment, for this discovery that he didn't want Tessa to leave, for this understanding that he had finally found something worthwhile. Love is the only thing that's worth it. He looked at the office door, thinking of the girl sleeping in the next room, a brave child who had changed his life completely. A child who had taught him more about courage and love in a few weeks than he had learned in years. For the first time since Ruth died, Holden felt he was on the right path, that he was doing what she would have wanted him to do, that he was, finally, opening his heart. He folded the letter carefully and put it away with the photo. Not in the drawer this time. He placed it on top of the desk, where he could see them whenever he entered the office. When he finally went to bed, Holden passed by Tessa's room. The door was ajar, and he could see her sleeping, hugging Mr. Brown. Tomorrow would be another day of routine. Breakfast, a visit to the hospital, drawing at the kitchen table. Another day of this life he discovered he didn't want to lose. Ruth was right. Love was the only thing that was worth it, and he was finally learning to truly love. The next morning, Holden woke up with a clarity he hadn't felt in a long time. Ruth's letter was still on his office desk, and her words echoed in his mind like a guide. Love is the only thing that's worth it. He knew exactly what he needed to do. Tessa was in the kitchen, already in her high chair, waiting for breakfast. She was holding Mr. Brown and humming softly. "Good morning," she said when she saw him. Are we going to see Mummy today? We are. But first, I want to talk to you about something. Holden sat in the chair next to her and looked into her eyes. I want your house to be beautiful when your mom comes back. Tessa stopped swinging her legs and looked at him attentively. What do you mean? I want to renovate your house. Paint the walls, fix what's broken, buy new furniture. I want that when your mom leaves the hospital, she finds everything perfect. Tessa's eyes widened. Really? She asked, her eyes shining. Really? And you're going to help me? You'll choose the colors, the furniture, everything. What do you think? Tessa jumped out of her chair and ran to hug him. Can I choose the color of my room? You can choose the color of the whole house if you want. And will Mommy like it? I'm sure she will. After breakfast, they went to the hospital first. Marion was sitting in an armchair next to the bed, reading a magazine. She was visibly better. Her cheeks had more color, her eyes were brighter. Mommy! Tessa ran to hug her. Holden is going to renovate our house. Marion looked over Tessa's head at Holden, confused. Renovate? It's a surprise, Holden said. For when you come home, Holden, you don't have to... Yes, I do. And Tessa is going to help with everything. She's going to be the architect. Tessa laughed out loud. I don't know what an architect is. It's the person who decides how things will look, Holden explained. And you're going to be the best architect in the world. Marion looked between the two of them, seeing Tessa's excitement and Holden's determination. Are you too sure? Absolutely, Holden replied. After the visit, they went straight to Marion and Tessa's house. Holden hadn't been inside since the first day, when he came to get Tessa. Seeing the place again, he realized how many things needed attention. Where do we start? He asked. Tessa walked through the house like a little inspector, pointing out problems Holden hadn't even noticed. The kitchen faucet drips. My bedroom door doesn't close properly. And there's a stain on the living room ceiling that looks like an elephant. Holden took out a notebook and started making a list. Faucet, door, ceiling. And that was just the beginning. What color do you want for the living room walls? Tessa thought for a moment. Yellow, like the sun. Mommy always says yellow makes people happy. Yellow it is. And your room? Light pink, but not too pink, just a little. Holden wrote everything down. They spent the whole morning going from room to room, with Tessa deciding every detail. She wanted curtains with flowers in the living room, a new shelf for her books, a big mirror in her mom's room. Then what if we put a special lamp here? She asked, pointing to a dark corner of the living room. What kind of lamp? One that makes pretty shadows on the ceiling. I saw one in a store once. Holden wrote down, special lamp. In the afternoon, they went to the stores. Tessa held his hand as they walked through the aisles, stopping to touch fabrics, test paints, try out pillows. This one is soft, she said, sinking her hand into a feather pillow. Do you want us to buy it for your mum? Yes, she always says her pillow is too hard. At the paint store, Tessa spent 20 minutes choosing the exact shade of yellow. This one is too dark. This one is too light. She pointed to a sample in the middle. This one is perfect. The salesman smiled. She has good taste. She's the architect, Holden said, proud. On Monday, the workers arrived. Holden had hired a full crew, painters, plumbers, electricians. Tessa wore a small hard hat Holden had bought for her and supervised everything like a little site manager. The yellow is turning out just like I wanted, she told the painter. Great, boss, the man replied, smiling. Holden watched Tessa command the renovation and felt something swell in his chest. She was so excited, so involved in every detail. It was as if she were building a real home for the first time. And he felt it too. For the first time in his life, he was building something for someone he loved. Not out of obligation, not for money, but for pure and simple love. In the following days, the house was completely transformed. The yellow living room walls turned out exactly as Tessa had imagined, cheerful and welcoming. Her room was painted the perfect shade of light pink, and Holden had small clouds painted on the ceiling. Now it feels like I'm sleeping in the sky, she said, lying on her new bed. Marion's room was painted a soft blue, and Holden installed the large mirror Tessa had chosen. He bought new furniture, curtains with flowers, a comfortable armchair for the living room. Something's missing, Tessa said, looking at the finished living room. What? Real flowers. Mommy loves flowers. Holden had vases of fresh flowers delivered to every room. Roses in the living room, daisies in the kitchen, lilies in Marion's room. The special lamp Tessa wanted projected stars onto the living room ceiling when turned on. She lay on the floor for 10 minutes, looking up. "It's magical," she whispered. On Thursday, when the renovation was almost complete, Holden installed the last surprise. A small bookshelf in Tessa's room, painted the same pink as the wall, filled with new books. "So you'll never run out of stories to read," he said. Tessa ran her fingers over the books one by one. "Mommy is going to cry when she sees all this." "Why?" "Because she'll be so happy. She always cries when she's very happy." On Friday, the house was ready. Holden and Tessa did a final inspection, checking every detail. "It's perfect," Tessa said, spinning in the middle of the living room. "Mommy is going to love it." Holden looked around the transformed house and felt a satisfaction unlike anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't the satisfaction of closing a deal or landing an important client. It was the satisfaction of building something with love, of creating a home for people he cared about. He had spent years building a career, accumulating money, buying things for himself. But he had never felt the fulfillment he felt now, seeing the joy in Tessa's eyes. "Do you think she'll really like it?" Tessa asked, suddenly insecure. Holden knelt beside her. "She's going to love every detail, because it was made with a lot of care by people who love her. By us. By us." That night, after putting Tessa to bed, Holden returned to the renovated house alone. He turned on the star lamp and stood there, in the middle of the yellow and cozy living room. He had built many things in his life. Businesses, professional relationships, a solid career. But he had never built a home. He had never created something with the comfort and happiness of others in mind. And now, looking at the house they had transformed together, Holden understood what Ruth meant in her letter. He was finally building something worthwhile. He was building love, care, family. He was building a life that had meaning. The morning of Marion's discharge arrived with a mix of anxiety and joy. Holden woke up early, more nervous than he thought he would be. He had spent a whole week preparing for this moment, but now that it was happening, he felt as if nothing could have adequately prepared him. Tessa could barely eat her breakfast. She pushed her scrambled eggs around on her plate, anxious, her little legs swinging on the chair at a rapid pace. "Is Mommy going to like the new house?" she asked for the 10th time since she woke up. "She's going to love it," Holden repeated, adjusting his tie. Even though he knew it was a special day, he couldn't avoid the formality of his attire. "What if she doesn't like the curtains?" "She'll like them. You chose them thinking of her, remember?" "What if she thinks we changed too much?" Holden stopped what he was doing and knelt beside her chair. "Tessa, your mum is going to be happy because she'll see how much you care about her. And because she'll realize she's not alone anymore." They arrived at the hospital promptly at 10 in the morning. Marion was sitting on the edge of the bed, already dressed in normal clothes for the first time in weeks. She was visibly stronger, but still frail. Her hair had grown a bit, and there was real color in her cheeks. "Mommy." Tessa ran to hug her. "You look pretty." "Thank you, love. I'm feeling much better." Holden watched the two of them reunite with a smile on his face. After weeks of quick visits and conversations through glass, they could finally hug for real. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Anxious to go home," Marion replied. "And nervous too. Fear it's been so long since I've been in my own house." Tessa held her mother's hand. "Wait until you see it, Mommy. It's going to be an amazing surprise." The doctor appeared with the discharge papers and the final instructions. Marion would need to continue taking medication for a few months and have regular checkups, but the worst was over. The treatment had been a success. "The tumor has shrunk by 80%, Dr. Stevens explained. "In 6 months, with follow-up scans, we expect it to be completely gone." Holden felt a deep sense of relief. Marion was going to be okay. Tessa wouldn't lose her mother. It had all been worth it. The drive home was quiet. Marion looked out the window, observing the city as if seeing it for the first time. Tessa held her hand, eager to show her all the changes When they reached their street, Marion frowned. "The house looks different from the outside," she said. "That's part of the surprise," Tessa said, barely able to contain her excitement. Holden helped Marion out of the car. She walked slowly through the small front yard, noticing the new flowers, the repaired fence, the fresh paint on the porch. When they reached the front door, Tessa looked at Holden. "Can I open it?" "Of course. It's your house." Tessa opened the door and went in first. Marion took a step inside and stopped completely. The living room was unrecognizable. The yellow walls glowed in the morning light. The new furniture was arranged perfectly. The floral curtains framed the windows, and fresh flowers decorated every surface. The sofa where she used to sleep when she was very sick had been replaced by a comfortable armchair and a new couch. "Oh my God," she whispered, bringing a hand to her mouth. "Do you like it?" Tessa asked, hopping from one foot to the other. Marion couldn't answer. She looked around the room as if she were dreaming. Everything was clean, new, cared for. It was the same house, but transformed into something she never imagined she could have. "Come see your room, Mummy." Tessa pulled her mother by the hand, leading her down the hallway. Marion stopped at her own bedroom door and covered her face with her hands. The soft blue walls, the new bed with white sheets, the large mirror, the restored dresser, everything perfect, everything designed for her comfort. And my room. Tessa ran to her room. The clouds painted on the light pink ceiling, the bookshelf full of new books, the small but cozy bed. Marion sat on the edge of her daughter's bed and began to cry. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Tessa asked, worried. "They're happy tears, love. They're tears of joy." They returned to the living room, where Holden was anxiously waiting for her reaction. Marion looked at him, unable to speak. How did you do this?" "Holden hired a bunch of people," Tessa explained, "and I chose everything. The colors, the furniture, the flowers. I was the architect." Marion looked around again, trying to process the magnitude of what had happened. "This must have cost a fortune." Holden approached her. "It doesn't matter how much it cost. I decided to renovate your house." He paused. "And I also set up a fund to ensure Tessa has everything she needs. School, clothes, doctors, everything. You two will never have to worry about money again." Marion stared at him, incredulous. "What did you say?" "A fund. Enough money for Tessa to have everything she needs until she grows up. So that you never have to work 2 jobs or worry about paying bills again." Marion covered her face with her hands and began to cry harder. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. "Mommy," Tessa approached, scared. "You don't like it?" "I love it, love. I love it so, so much." Holden gently touched Marion's shoulder. "You took care of my mother when she needed it most. Now it's my turn to take care of you." Marion finally managed to stop crying enough to speak. "I don't know how to thank you. This is more than I could ever dream of. It's more than anyone deserves." "You deserve all of this and more, you both do. But why? Why did you do all this?" Holden looked at Tessa, who was hugging her mother, then looked at Marion. "Because you two taught me what really matters in life. Because for the first time, I understood what true love is. And because—" He hesitated for a moment. "Because I don't want this to end. I don't want to go back to the life I had before. Just let me be a part of your lives." Marion looked at him through her tears. "You want to be a part of our lives? If you'll let me. If Tessa wants me to." Tessa let go of her mother and ran to hug Holden. "Of course we do. You're our family now." Marion stood up slowly and approached the two of them. "Holden, you saved our lives. Literally. You saved my life and gave my daughter a future. How can I say no?" The three of them hugged in the middle of the yellow room, surrounded by flowers and light. For the first time in a long time, they all felt complete. A few weeks later, on a Sunday morning, Holden woke up early and went alone to a place he hadn't visited in months. The cemetery was quiet, with only the sound of birds and the wind in the trees. He walked to Ruth's grave and placed white flowers, her favorite, in the vase next to the headstone. He stood there for a moment, just looking at the name engraved on the stone. "Hi, Mum," he said softly. "I know it's been a while since I've been here. But I had some things to take care of first." The wind rustled the flowers. "It took me too long to understand what matters. I spent so much time afraid to feel, to truly commit, that I almost missed my chance to be happy. He took a deep breath. But I think I've finally learned now. Holden told Ruth about Tessa, about Marion, about how they had changed his life, about the house renovation, about the fund he created, about how he felt complete for the first time. The letter you left, it came at the right time. You always knew I would need it one day, didn't you? He stood there for a few more minutes, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced in years. He was finally doing what Ruth would have wanted him to do. He was truly living. A few hours later, Holden parked in front of the yellow house. Before he even got out of the car, the door opened and Tessa came running out. "Holden!" she yelled, jumping into his arms. "You're here!" "Of course I'm here. I promised I'd be here every Sunday." Marion appeared at the door right behind her, a calm smile on her face. She was wearing a light blue dress and looked healthier with each passing day. "I thought you weren't coming today," she said, teasing. "I promised I'd be here every Sunday," Holden replied, carrying Tessa in his arms. "And you always keep your promises," Tessa said, kissing his cheek. They went into the house that now felt like a real home. Marion made coffee while Tessa showed Holden the homework she had to do. "It's about family," she explained, spreading her books on the kitchen table. "I have to draw my family and write about each person." "That's cool. How are you going to draw it?" "You, me and Mommy, and Mr. Brown too, of course." Holden helped Tessa with her homework while Marion finished lunch. Every now and then, she would look at the two of them bent over the books and smile. This was exactly how she had always imagined life should be. That afternoon, after lunch, they sat in the yellow living room. Marion read a book in the new armchair. Tessa drew on the floor, and Holden helped her choose the right colors. "This one for Mommy's dress," Tessa said, showing him a pink pencil. "Perfect." Holden looked around the room, at Marion focused on her reading, at Tessa spread out on the floor with her drawings, at the fresh flowers on the table, at the golden afternoon light streaming through the curtains Tessa had chosen. For the first time in his life, he felt like he belonged somewhere. He wasn't just a visitor or a helpful friend. He was a part of it. He was family. Ruth was right. Love was truly the only thing that was worth it. And finally, after so much time running from it, Holden had learned to truly love. The following week, Holden made a decision that surprised even himself. He drastically reduced his workload, starting to work only part-time. For the first time in years, the office was no longer the center of his life. Now his mornings were different. He took Tessa to school when Marion had doctor's appointments. He had lunch with them on Saturdays. He helped with the shopping, with small repairs around the house, with everything a family does together. "Don't you miss work?" Marion asked one afternoon as they had tea in the yellow living room. "No," Holden replied, watching Tessa play with Mr. Brown on the rug. "For the first time in my life, I know exactly where I want to be." Marion smiled. "Ruth would be proud of you." "I hope so." That night, after Tessa went to sleep, Holden and Marion sat talking in the living room. It was something that happened more frequently lately, quiet conversations about the day, about plans for the future, about life. "Sometimes it still feels like a dream," Marion said. "All of this. The house, the security, you being a part of our lives. It feels like a dream to me too. But it's the best dream I've ever had. You know you don't have to do all this, right? You've already done more for us than we could ever imagine." Holden looked at her, at the woman who had cared for his mother so lovingly, who was now an essential part of his life. "I do it because I want to, because you're my family now, and family takes care of each other." Marion smiled, and in that smile, Holden saw gratitude, affection, and something deeper that was beginning to grow between them. "Thank you, Holden, for everything, for giving us a chance to start over. Thank you for letting me start over too." When he got home that night, Holden passed by his office and saw Ruth's letter still on the desk. He picked it up and reread it one more time. "Love is the only thing that's worth it." He smiled and carefully put the letter in the drawer, not to hide it, but to protect it. One day, maybe, he would show it to Tessa. He would tell her about the grandmother she never knew, but who had somehow made it possible for them to meet. For now, it was enough to know that Ruth was right. Love was indeed the only thing that was worth it. And finally, at 42, Holden had learned to truly love, and best of all, he had a family who loved him back. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.